Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Why don't you come closer so we can play? Good morning. This is a beautiful, crisp Thursday, and we thank you all for coming out. My name is Juanita Budd, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Executive Director for Austin Freenet. And what you've been experiencing this week has been totally the brainchild and the coordination of the N10 Fellows. And I'll start first with Tianka Crocker over there with the blue and white. She is one amazing go-getter. You will not find anyone except the other fellows I'm about to talk with about coordinating this whole week. It's been an amazing week. Also in coordination, we have Sam Story from HACA. Please stand up, Sam. And Ernesto Resto from Skill Point Alliance. And all of these fellows are spending 1 year with organizations to help us bridge the digital divide. Today we are focusing on the Digital Inclusion Symposium. We're doing this both locally and nationally, so it's going to be an amazing event. And thank you guys for coming. I know this has been a really busy week. We just want to thank you all for taking time to come out and say hello to us. So why are we here today? We are here to talk about digital inclusion. And what is digital inclusion? Digital inclusion is talking about the inequities of digital technology in our communities and how some of us have access to technologies while others don't. And we want to bridge that digital divide. Austin alone has about 55,000 people who don't have access or continuous access to technology. And we want to help ensure that everyone, not just you and your neighbor, but everyone is connected. Digital inclusion refers to the activities to ensure that all individuals in the community, including the most vulnerable, have access to and use of technology in our community. This whole week is surrounded about awareness and digital inclusion from the Carolinas to California. And we're right in the middle providing that service as well. So let me, without further ado, talk about our sponsors. Google Fiber always is an amazing sponsor. We want to thank you. We want to thank NDIA, N10, and the City of Austin Digital Inclusion team. Google Fiber goes beyond, above and beyond in the community. Most of you are in here and have been touched by the work and support that Google Fiber has done, and I just want to give them a round of applause and thanks. And again, this week would not be possible without our sponsor, Skill Point Alliance. If you're here in the room, thank you. And the Housing Authority for the City of Austin, Austin Pathways, been a tremendous, tremendous partner in this effort to bridge the digital divide. Where is Austin Pathways? Catherine, thank you so much. Thank you. Now for our first panelist, we're going to introduce Mr. Omar LG. And if you don't know who Mr. Omar LG is, you have missed the vote. But let me tell a little bit about him. He works for Austin American Statesman 512 Tech Club. And during his work with the Statesman, he's been an editor, a reporter, a business and entertainment and technology, but also he was the founding editor of Ahora Sí, great magazine. Cox Media, Austin's Spanish language newspaper, and outside of his day job, as if he would have some additional time, he has written for the Wall Street Journal, Rolling Stones, CNN.com, Hispanic Magazine, and a tech correspondent, get this y'all, NPR, All Things Considered. He was the founding member and writer-performer of the Austin Award-winning Latino Comedy Project. And without further ado, wait, you can hear him on Thursdays at the Texas Standard. And without further ado, I introduce you to Mr. Ayega.
Hi. Good morning. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Juanita. I'm sorry, I didn't know if I should do like the Price is Right and just like wave my arms coming down the aisle. Sorry about that. So yes, I'm a technology reporter for 512 Tech, which is the technology website for the Austin American-Statesman that we launched last year during South by Southwest. We try to cover digital culture. Last year, we launched a project to cover diversity in the technology industry, and we've done a lot of stories in that area, and we're continuing to hunt for stories. So please let us know, give us news tips if you think there's an issue with diversity in tech that we're not writing about, if there's people that we should be highlighting and profiling and letting people know that they're doing great work in the tech industry. We want to hear about it, so let us know. Today, I'm thrilled to be moderating a panel featuring some leaders in the Austin community who have put a lot of thought into how more widespread internet access and access to technology solutions can benefit all of our communities. I'm going to introduce them one by one and let them come up here and say a little bit about themselves and what they do. And also, I'm going to ask them to list at the start what they believe are the biggest obstacles to digital inclusion and diversity. So I'm going to start with Daniel Lucio, Community Impact Manager at Google Fiber, our hosts. Thank you. You can wait. So Daniel, tell us what you do and what you think are the big challenges.
Absolutely.
Oh, you got to turn it on, sorry.
I'm a tech guy, can you tell? So I manage our community partnerships and programs here in Austin for Google Fiber. And a lot of times that means working with public partners like Austin Freenet or the City of Austin on digital inclusion, digital literacy initiatives here. And you know, I think we've really tried to approach the challenge of getting folks online and digital inclusion from the mindset of while the tools may be there, you know, folks really need a helping hand in understanding like why this impacts their lives, what's relevant for them. That's what we hear on the ground. That's what we see in the research. And so a lot of our efforts are aimed towards that. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge that we face is making sure that folks understand that technology is moving along and we can help them utilize it.
And we'll talk more about Google Fiber and gigabit internet in a little bit. Next, I want to introduce Vicky Yakunin, Director of Government and Community Affairs at Charter Communications. Thanks, Vicky.
Hello.
Vicky,
Wonderful.
tell us about what you do at Charter and what you see as some of the big challenges for digital inclusion.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Omar. And thanks to Google Fiber for hosting us today. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. And very excited to talk today about our Spectrum Internet Assist program, our low-cost broadband program that just launched here in Texas about 6 weeks ago. So brand new to the market. You know, from my perspective, certainly from Charter's perspective, I think affordable internet access is huge. And so we understand that we have a role to play in that arena, and we're excited to share that information today with you all. So, and I manage our rollout of our Spectrum Internet Assist here in Texas and Louisiana as well.
Cool, and we'll talk about what that is and how people can get involved with that and signed up and all that in a little bit. Next, I want to introduce Sharon Strover, the Philip G. Warner Regents Professor in Communication at the Moody College of Communication at the University of Texas at Austin. Did I miss any words in that? It was a lot of words. It's a mouthful.
Too many words, too many words.
Sharon, tell us what areas you teach in and research in and what you see as some of the big issues that you're looking at.
I teach in the areas of technology, communication technology, policy, law, and I've been examining the issue of digital inclusion for several years. And I think your framing of the question around barriers to digital inclusion in the plural is the right way to talk about it. And my response to that question about the barriers would be that it really varies tremendously depending on where people are. Rural areas have much less availability to networks, to internet in general, than do urban areas. It varies a lot by age, and it varies a lot by what, as Daniel said, people perceive as the relevancy of connecting to the internet. So I'm sure we'll
We
expand
will
on
get
those.
into all of that. Thank you. Next, I want to introduce Sarah Sharif, who is the event director for ATX Hack for Change, which happens June 2nd to 4th over a weekend. And I think it's been going 3 or 4 years? Fifth year. And Sarah, tell us what Hack for Change is and how you're involved with that.
Yeah, so name is Sarah Sharif. I work in IT at St. Edward's University, and I'm also the event director for ATX Hack for Change, one of the largest civic hackathons that we definitely host here in Austin, going into our 5th year. Some of y'all might see some flyers. It's June 2nd, 3rd, and 4th this year. And I think one of the biggest obstacles is when it comes to digital inclusion is the application. So really thinking about how industries are also evolving along with the public when it comes to public health, transportation systems, definitely in higher education, how we're kind of incorporating technology there as well.
Great. So we're going to get into, first, as promised, we're going to talk a little bit about gigabit internet. But I'm going to ask a question that, as I tend to cover consumer issues, more like the application of technology in terms of when you go to Best Buy and when you're at home and how it affects your life. One of the things that I always get asked by readers is, why isn't my internet cheaper over time? Like, my phone is cheaper, sensors are cheaper, all this technology that started in the 90s and the early 2000s is less expensive, computers, tablets. Why is my internet access going up? Why is that not changing? And I think when Google Fiber came to town, it really changed the game on pricing, on how we think about availability, and how we think about what speeds we should expect for that price. So Daniel, can you tell us a little bit about why overall internet access has not gotten cheaper over time and how Google Fiber is trying to change that?
Sure. I mean, Google Fiber has certainly played its role as, I think, a disruptor in the markets that we're in. We saw that in Austin. We saw that in Kansas City when we rolled out. And you know, our formation as an organization, you know, within the larger Google organization really came about as a call to action when President Obama had rolled out his broadband plan back in 2009 and really had a vision for getting more Americans connected. And we are, in many ways, still trying to fulfill that, right? We are constantly innovating on how we can bring internet, particularly broadband, to communities. But I want to like reframe for just 1 second, because the issue of access is absolutely important. And when you look at where the barriers are for folks to getting access, you know, there are many. But we also have a responsibility, and we've tried to take this kind of unique approach in the markets that we're in, of addressing the digital literacy issue, right? So it's not just about providing the access to it. What we've seen is that even though we can bring a competitive pricing and a product to a community, you still have to be able to be a steward in that community and create products and opportunities for folks to access that. So we work with organizations like Austin Freenet, like the Housing Authority of the City of Austin, to address those issues, to form and really kind of pilot these kind of digital literacy programs that help residents realize and access the internet at the places that they're at. So it's a multi-pronged approach. I can't speak to why like prices haven't gone down in other places, except maybe we need to be in more markets. You know, we're constantly trying to figure out how we can expand our reach here in Austin. So.
Vicki, you mentioned earlier the program that you're involved with at Charter. Can you talk a bit about how that's working to bring internet to people who could not traditionally afford, you know, full-blown broadband access?
Yeah, absolutely. So just want to share a few stats to frame the question up a little bit. The FCC recently released a report on broadband access, which tells us that 34 million Americans don't have broadband at home. And we also learned from the Pew Center that 5 million Americans with school-age children do not have broadband access at home. So we know that we have, an incredible opportunity out there for social impact, really, to get broadband into these homes. And so Spectrum Internet Assist is our program to address that. And it is now available in our 41 state footprint officially. Hawaii was our last market to launch just a couple weeks ago. But as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we did roll the program out here in Austin in the middle of March, and it is available for just under $15. It's $14.99 for 30 meg by 4 internet service. It's one of the fastest internet speeds for a low-cost broadband program that's out there. In fact, the 30 meg by 4 is higher than the FCC's own definition of what high-speed broadband is. So we're really proud to be able to offer that, and look forward to hosting launch events here in Austin and other parts of Texas here in the coming weeks and months.
Let's talk about that for a second, because the question I get from readers a lot is, I have this amount of internet access, I have like 20 megabits per second or whatever, can I stream Netflix with? That's the question I get all the time. Netflix, can I stream it at this? Can I stream it at HD, at those speeds? Can I share it with my kids if they're also gaming and doing these other things in the house? Let's talk about like what people get at that speed, like what they can do, versus the other end of the spectrum, which is the gigabit internet, which we're seeing AT&T and Google Fiber and Charter and everybody else get into. Like, what does 1 gigabit internet afford people that people can do with it versus kind of the, even like the 10 and 20 that we still see in rural areas or less, or 4 megabits, which I think you can stream like a very pixelated YouTube video at that speed. Can you both talk about like what those speed differences afford people to do?
So one of the programs that we have here in Austin is called Community Connections. This is in partnership with the City of Austin, and it's where we provide a free gigabit service to nonprofits, community partners that really demonstrate a need. And what we're seeing from those as we're getting those connected over time is that there's a huge need in the community for additional bandwidth. The clearest example that we had of that was really just recently. We got the YWCA connected. They were on a 3 meg connection previously for an organization that has 10 plus employees that have to handle their email and video streaming and communication with clients on the outside. The bandwidth that we had brought with that program significantly changed their capability to communicate, to operate with their clients. So I think that there are absolutely use cases out there, and we're trying to fill those out where the bandwidth has a huge impact on that. Now, is there a case for lower bandwidth at lower prices? Absolutely, and that's actually something that we've explored here in Austin as well. We have, we have a product called Broadband, which is accessible to parts of Austin. What we did was essentially, and Parissa, who's part of our community impact team, can correct me on the speed. I think it's, is it 25 megs, which is the FCC's definition for high-speed internet for 15, is that right? $15. So we are offering that product in different parts of Austin where we know, and the data shows from the FCC and the census, communities are underconnected. And so we recognize that there's kind of a spectrum of need, and we're trying to address that as an organization.
And I'll just add, 30 meg by 4 certainly allows you to stream Netflix. It allows you to do your homework, do the research that you need to get your homework done, to pay your bills, to, watch videos online if you choose to do that. It's certainly a solid speed to do any of that. So,
Sure.
Could you both comment on data caps? In your service plans? Because the speeds are great, but if the data caps aren't high enough, there can be problems.
And we should explain, data caps would be like, let's say you have a set amount of internet access, amount of data before you either get cut off or get throttled. They might lower your speeds once you hit a certain threshold, like with your cell phone.
Yeah, so we don't have data caps in any of our product. We recognize that is a barrier. We see that a lot in the mobile market, and and that's particularly prevalent here in Austin, where you have households that may not have a computer at home but have a mobile device, and so providing availability of access of internet even at the home, even with a mobile device, is still extremely important. So, but yeah, we don't have data caps for those reasons.
Neither do we, nor do we offer any kind of usage-based billing or anything like that. We don't throttle your speeds if you hit a certain amount of bandwidth use.
Yeah, it has become a big issue in the mobile industry because if the phone is your only access point, if that is the only way you're getting online and you're relying on it for everything, and then you start hitting these limits where it's going to slow you down or charge you more, then yeah, that becomes a huge economic problem. Sharon, let's talk to you for a second. Let me ask you, I mean, in your role in higher ed, I mean, are you seeing students leaving college and kind of having a rude awakening as to what technology tools they have available or what kind of access? When you're in college, I mean, you get pretty good access to tools and high-speed internet, and then you leave college, you're trying to get in the workforce, you're not making a lot of money. What happens to students then?
Depends on where they end up, actually, at a place like the University of Texas here in town. It's a beautiful, high bandwidth, ubiquitous connection environment, and people get pretty used to that. When they leave, if their workplace doesn't have that kind of connectivity, it is indeed a rude awakening. One comparison, though, that really struck me occurred in a study I did a couple years ago where I was looking at how students used a lot of streaming technology and how they were watching television video content in new ways. And I studied ACC students as well as UT students. ACC is not quite as bandwidth rich, and the students who are there are often working full-time, so they're only there in a very part-time way, and they usually don't have as much money, frankly, as the UT students do. And I found some definite differences, and a lot of people who were being very, very careful about where their connectivity was, where the Wi-Fi spots were that they could connect to, where their data cap was for the month, so that they weren't going to either get throttled or get charged a lot more. So there is a real, the world can be a rather rude and cold place when you leave a bandwidth-rich environment. Just to elaborate one sec, I'm doing a study in New York City right now among people who use libraries a lot for either the free Wi-Fi access or the computers themselves. And life is a constant hop and skip to the next place they can figure out has free Wi-Fi.
Well, let's give a plug to Austin Freenet, because that is one issue. Every time I talk to Freenet, that's what they're doing. They're trying to get access to people who need to find a job and can only do it online, and providing these tools to the community. So thank you, Austin Freenet. I can applaud. Sharon and I were emailing a little bit about 5G, which came up in our conversation. So the AT&Ts and I believe T-Mobile and I think Sprint just announced this week some of their 5G plans. So this is going to be faster wireless internet. It's going to solve some problems, but I think Sharon and I kind of agree that it's not going to solve all the problems, and that especially in rural internet areas, it's not going to be the cure-all that we might hope for. Can you talk to that a little bit, Sharon?
Sure. I think technologically, the evolution of our connectivity has always been toward faster speeds and more capacity in terms of bandwidth, which has been great. And that's involved a lot of technologies and investments by companies in the technologies so that these new capacities are feasible. However, those investments come with certain costs, and they come with certain strings as well. From a kind of national perspective, a lot of major companies say they will make the investments if they are deregulated, if there are fewer obligations that they might have toward the public. When that happens, what I observe is that we end up with a trickle-down situation among poorer populations, and especially in rural areas. Those become the places that get the services last, if at all. And I'm bringing this up because I really think cost is a critical issue in all this. And I'm hearing over and over again from everybody that I work with that affordability is a huge impediment to the ability to either get mobile access or fixed access. The $15 a month sounds pretty good. I bet it's not going to be at some of my tiny towns in a Kansas study that I'm undertaking right now. Probably rolling out in urban areas.
So it's rolling out everywhere Charter is. So basically what happens is when you visit our website, spectruminternetassist.com, you plug in your zip code and it automatically tells you if you're in our service area. So if you're in the service area, it is available. But certainly if you're in the service area of another cable operator or someone else, I cannot speak to their programs. But many of them have low-cost broadband programs.
Yeah. If they do in the rural areas I'm looking at, people don't know about them. They are not.
Yeah,
not
Sharon,
aware.
you might be hearing the same things I'm hearing, which is from readers who are way, way out in the sticks, places that are just now being, houses are just being built in these areas. What I'm hearing from them is, we have one or two options, and there's a wait list of like 3 months. Like, I'm not gonna be able to get internet access. I have to sign up and maybe wait and see if I can get on their list because they're so backlogged. And it is expensive to wire these areas, to do hard wiring, to lay fiber in these areas in very spread out places. So there was the hope that maybe wireless could step in and solve some of those issues, but it doesn't seem like 5G is going to be able to
Well,
give
I
that
never
wide coverage.
got to 5G. 5G, I think, is really infeasible for rural areas for at least two reasons. One is the trickle-down theory. The other is 5G will be very fast, but it requires a lot of very small cells and antennas. And fundamentally, the space, the geographic space that a typical 5G installation will cover is extremely small. So you need a lot of these cells, and you need backhaul as well to support those speeds. You need a connection to take your phone call or your streaming request back to the internet. And that backhaul doesn't always exist in rural areas, certainly. So between the very small geographic coverage, which doesn't work to the advantage of rural areas, which are more spread out in terms of potential customers, plus the backhaul issue, it's not going to really hit rural areas for some time.
I mean, I'm hearing from readers who are telling me I'm relying on a satellite service, and getting 2 megabits for like $100 a month, which is insane. It seems crazy, but it's still happening. Let's shift a little bit from bandwidth and speed to the application of some of these technologies. Sarah, let's talk about Hack for Change and what role do people in the community, people in the tech industry specifically play in solving some of these issues? It seems like things like hackathons, things like meetups are allowing techies to give back to the communities and get more involved. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so at least with ATX Hack for Change, we've been piloting and doing workshops leading up to the hackathon. So we'll have kind of a coding 101 workshop. We had a workshop on hackathon tech and tools. And I'm looking around the room, and I know she's not here, but she doesn't mind me sharing her age. Carol was an 8-year-old lady, wonderful lady that I met at Hackathon Tech and Tools this year. And we were doing, I don't know if many of you are familiar with Slack, but she came up to me and she's like, okay, Sarah, teach me about this Slacker. I want to be a hacker. And it was adorable because it was a great moment for us to connect and for me to actually, number one, I definitely corrected her and I was like, it's called Slack, but you can call it Slacker. But it's this instant communication messenger tool, and it amazed her how rapid it was, and she enjoyed it 10 times more than using her email. So I think these kinds of events, especially like civic hackathons, really provides a space for folks that are in the tech industry, or even many of you here perhaps that are very comfortable with using, for example, your Gmail or Google Hangouts or tools like this, to actually serve as community educators, to really be civic champions for your fellow community that are trying to get involved and that are trying and openly wanting to actually learn about what is happening at hackathons, what is civic tech, how do I get involved with all of these wonderful things happening here in Austin. And I think the other great benefit of having certainly civic hackathons, and I'm a huge advocate for having more cities and more folks actually participate in running these, is that it builds a unique community hub where all of a sudden at a table I'm talking to a city council member or somebody who's a fun policy wonk or a student or a faculty member conducting research. And the conversation that happens at that table is completely unique because it's informal. We didn't come there with, we're sitting there in flip-flops and shorts on a Saturday, sitting there and talking about how do we tackle these big community issues. So I think there's a lot of value to that.
What are some specific projects that have come out of Hack for Change that are still ongoing?
Yeah, so I'll talk about two. We're going into our 5th year. We've hacked 107 projects at this point. Our goal this year is to reach 50 community projects. So if you have an idea right now of how to improve Austin, our submission deadline is May 19th, so it's coming up. But one of the projects, sorry, I said I would talk about two. So one of them was Brave Communities. They're an organization here in town. They wanted to do a reward system for folks that do social good. So for the many of you that might know, at coffee shops, you get, the buy 10, get 1 free. They were like, wouldn't it be great if we had a system where, okay, you did 10 cool things for folks here in Austin, we'll treat you to a free dinner, or now you get a free coffee at Joe's, or something like that that actually incentivizes people to reward each other for doing good in our city. So that was a great project that I hope is coming back again this year. I've been working with certain folks in that organization. Another project that was one of our leading projects last year was Expunge My Record. So for a lot of folks here, I know we have very low unemployment rates here in Austin, but definitely for a lot of folks that are moving here, they go to the job interview, they're getting, obviously, all their security clearance and background checks, and stuff will come up from when they were 16, 17, 18. And for a lot of folks, let's flash back to perhaps when you were 18 years old and all the things you could have possibly gotten up to. So they wanted to have a website that kind of walked folks through this process of how do I actually expunge my record. And it is live. I'm spacing on the website, but I actually think it is expungemyrecord.org. And they're coming back this year for the next iteration. But they had a wonderful step-by-step guide of here are all the things and the forms and the offices and departments that you need to talk to actually do that.
I want to go back to Vicki and Daniel and ask, what are some things you all have learned from your initiatives, from getting more people access, from getting people online? What are some of the lessons you all have learned, and what are some things that maybe could apply to other organizations that want to advocate for inclusion and diversity?
I'll go. Okay, cool. I'll go. So we've definitely learned, and we've tried to kind of display this in how we operate in the community, to kind of take a step back, right? We're not the experts on digital inclusion. The organizations that have been doing this, like Austin Freenet, Skill Point Alliance, for like 20 years, they understand the needs. They're on the ground. They're providing training. Some of the best things that we can do is support them in that programming. I think that's a really big lesson that we've taken in any time that we do those types of partnerships and support those efforts. It's significant, and it has a significant impact on the community, and we really learn to kind of play a supportive role that way instead of saying, hey, we've got all the answers. And I think too, with those experiences is the reinforcement that there is a need here in Austin. There's I think the last number from the city of Austin was something like 55,000 households underconnected here in Austin. That's huge. That's 55,000 families without access to a steady or reliable internet connection, right? So we've got a ways to go in terms of how we're connecting with folks, what resources we're bringing. So those are two, I think, the biggest lessons we've taken.
Vicki?
And so we're really just getting started in this space. It's just been, we officially launched Spectrum Internet Assist very late last year in certain markets outside of Texas. And like I said, we are just getting started here in Texas. But our strategy that we have in place, our go-forward strategy is partnerships with school districts, especially those that have a high percentage of students on the national school lunch program, because Spectrum Internet Assist is available to families with students who are on that program. So we know we have a lot of public school districts, certainly in Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, that are 80–90% on this program. So working in partnership with school districts to get the word out about the program, hitting those PTA meetings, hitting various meetings that the schools set up to educate parents and other constituents, caregivers at the school, so that they're aware of the program, and walking them through the enrollment process, and kind of how they get started, the eligibility verification process. So that's one area. We're partnering with elected officials on some community events, hoping to work with them to get the information out to their constituents, who are eligible. I should say, if I didn't mention this, Spectrum Internet Assist is available to students, families with students on the National School Lunch Program, and it's also available to seniors age 65 and over who qualify for supplemental security income. So we've got a big market. So working with elected officials, trying to hit their constituents, that fall into those categories. Of course, at Charter, we have a marketing department, and they are doing quite a bit of targeted marketing as well, doing the research to understand where these folks live, making sure that we've got door hangers, that we're sending letters, that we're sending direct mail pieces, so that folks are aware of, here's this program, and this is how you sign up. That's what's included in all of our letters and our direct mail pieces. And then one area that I'm really excited about is looking for opportunities to partner with nonprofit organizations to help support Spectrum Internet Assist. Right now, because we're in the initial stages, we don't have a digital literacy program that is part of Spectrum Internet Assist. So perhaps working with a nonprofit that can work with us on that area of digital literacy, and also nonprofits that help folks with refurbished computers at a low cost. Because it's one thing to provide the internet, but it's another thing to also have a computer and understand how to use the internet. And so we're looking at partnerships that will allow us to do that.
Right before we started, right over there, I was having a conversation about the state legislature, all that's going on there, and how it can often seem a little bit out of step with the speed at which technology is evolving. We're having that conversation right over there. So I want to ask, and open this up to everybody on the panel, what role, if any, should local, state, and federal government play in closing this digital divide or creating more affordable solutions?
I have a few ideas about that.
Do you? I want to hear it.
I was really struck. I had the opportunity to talk with some folks in Sweden in the fall, and I was looking at how they have managed to deploy so much fiber in the northern rural areas of a pretty substantially sized country. Fiber is everywhere. And what they said is basically the state said to communities, you can go ahead and build it yourself if you want. We'll give you a little minimal help. You can connect up to the internet. We're not going to put any barriers in your way. And communities actually responded and created, a lot of them are farming communities. They have equipment, they have backhoes, they know how to do stuff. They just created their own networks. And frankly, this has been going on in the United States. And I mean, telephony historically, a lot of telephony went in that way as well. So kind of getting out of the way and letting neighborhoods and communities build their own would be a huge improvement. Right now we have laws, many of them promulgated by an organization called ALEC, A-L-E-C, with cookie cutter legislation prohibiting these kinds of endeavors. I think that's a huge impediment. But beyond that, I think demonstration programs are really helpful. And there's empirical research. My colleague Joe Strabhauer is here, and we did a study several years ago in which we compared 4 communities that deployed broadband differently. The one that had a lot of demonstrations and a lot of endorsements, a lot of digital literacy efforts, did the best in terms of people actually adopting broadband and using it.
Yeah, if I can build on that a little bit, you know, I can't speak to the federal or state level much, but I can say that the city of Austin's actually played a really critical role in pushing digital inclusion programming for the city. We're one of the few cities in the country that have a digital inclusion office. We have a strategic plan to address digital literacy in the city. I'm really excited about the programs that they've supported, and they continue to be kind of a convener and drive that narrative, and we're going to help push that as well, right? This is an issue that all Austinites should be concerned about, and the city has really played a critical role in that. So I think local government absolutely has a role at the table and a responsibility for this, and the city of Austin has really played a significant effort in that.
Stepping back a little bit from inclusion and talking a little bit more about the issue of tech diversity, we've had a bunch of bills in the state legislature this session related to sanctuary cities, immigration, LGBTQ rights that are getting national attention. To what degree does the perception of Texas as a diverse and progressive place affect our future as a tech hub? It seems like it will be hard to attract tech companies to continue to expand to Austin if some of these laws are in place. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I can just speak to that real quick. And this question definitely is very personal and emotional for me. You know, the word that comes to mind when I think of future businesses is consciousness. So, you know, we have all these tech companies that are certainly invested in giving back to the community and being involved with local communities. So, you know, Atlassian has their 1% pledge program, Microsoft has Tech for Good. But I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, you know, what are the intentions? And then additionally, beyond that, you know, where is the empathy? Because, you know, I've lived in Austin for a bunch of years now, and certainly for myself, I think there's assumptions and undertones definitely here. I mean, folks assume that I love curry, which I do. But, you know, it does raise that question of, you know, where are we right now in terms of being a community? You know, are we conscious? Are we welcoming to those that, you know, when we think about where does that tech talent come from, you know, is this city appealing to those folks? Is it attractive? And I think those are questions that we collectively have to address, and I think we're not there yet, but you know, I do foresee it being a major impact.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
Well, I guess I would just offer, on a really grassroots level, I think the climate, the anti-immigrant climate in particular, is really depressing the feeling that people can even use a lot of the services that are available, say, in libraries, because the immigrant community in particular is afraid. And certainly this legislation that we're probably stuck with here in Texas is not going to help at all. From a digital inclusion perspective, I think it's quite damaging.
Yeah, if you're someone who feels you're going to be targeted and needs to stay out of sight, are you going to want to sign up for cheaper internet and get on a wait list? Probably not. Let me ask one more question here before we open it up to Q&A with the audience. We're going to have about a 10-15 minute Q&A. You can come up and ask a question. There was a list on the New York Times this week of kind of the big kind of tech titans that we live with every day, the Google, Apple, Microsoft, and asking which of these could you do without. Let's not go that route and be negative. We don't want to get rid of Google yet, no. But let's ask this. What do you wish some of these tech companies were doing to promote inclusion and diversity? What do you think these companies are not doing? And, you know, talk about Google, don't worry. But what do you wish the Apples and the Microsofts of the world were doing right now? Anyone can answer this.
Well, I wish they were a little more proactive in the space in general, which includes more greater investment. Historically, a lot of the equipment, the consumer item companies, the Apples and the Googles with Chromebook, Apple with their computers and so forth, have really attempted to integrate their products into the educational market, often with less than satisfactory results. And I think, frankly, and a little bit of self-interest speaking now probably, I think we need better and more public research on what really is working and what's not working. And then some action on, don't do these deals with these big equipment purchases if educational systems aren't prepared to really use them and incorporate them into educational planning. But, enable teachers to have adequate training so that, and materials, make materials available so that these facilities can really be used. There's such a huge disconnect between the latest and greatest, the shiniest piece of technology, and perhaps even the fastest bandwidth, and what people are either skilled or able to afford, or what they know how to do with them.
Oh, and just to add to that, it's listening to that end user need. It's listening to the community. And to that point as well, and I know I talked about this before, it's serving that role as that community educator, as that civic educator, to support the education and the distribution of those materials as well.
I was just going to say, I feel like, I feel very privileged being at Google. First off, I'll say that. It's a great organization to work with. And I think what makes me comfortable in saying that as well is it's really made up of a ton of really remarkable individuals, right? It's one thing to look at an organization like Google, and yeah, that's huge and it's kind of nefarious looking, right? But really, it's a bunch of folks really trying to do good and make their impact on their world. And you see that sometimes. One of the most significant examples of this, I think, just recently was when the immigration ban was passed. Google essentially made $1 million donation for immigration resources across the United States. It was one of the biggest investments that we had as an organization. And that was really driven by people in the company who had both personal stake and were personally affected by it. But it's part of our responsibility, and we try this very much at Google Fiber, to bring back this sense of we really need to make investments in the community. We need to continue to do that, and we need to do it on the community's terms. And I feel very privileged to be in a place, in an organization that really, we hold our feet to the fire in that as well. So,
Sharon, to your point, I'll just mention real quick, I got to visit Dell a couple of weeks ago and talk about some of their designs and what they're doing and kind of their 5 and 10 year plans. And definitely in the education space, they mentioned, we are talking directly to researchers, we're talking directly to teachers. Maybe it's not a computer that needs to be in the classroom. Maybe it's not a tablet that they need. Maybe it's something we haven't even thought of yet. So it was encouraging to hear them be open to, maybe it's not even a Dell product. Maybe it's something that we can partner with, but is not necessarily our hardware. So that was really encouraging to hear them open to the other possibilities that are not, let's just put our product in there and make some money. We're going to open it up to Q&A now. We're going to need everybody who wants to ask a question to talk directly into the microphone because we're recording this and it's only going to pick up audio if you speak into the mic. So anyone who'd like to come up and ask a question to the panel, please do so. Or if you can't get up here, we can get the mic to you. Hi.
Hi, I just have a comment. I'm a teacher, and I've watched for years that, schools buying tons of equipment and that it ends up as doorstops because nobody uses it. And so when I got into technology as a teacher, I ended up being a computer teacher and training teachers and students. And I moved here from Missouri, and Missouri had a program where teachers had to do 200 hours of training in order to get a bunch of equipment for their classrooms. And I just totally believe in that. And I really think that companies, what you said about companies putting that and helping schools to realize that it's the training as much as it is the equipment that makes a difference.
Anyone want to speak to that? I'll mention one thing. There was a place I wrote about, a service called Bookshare that I wrote about for 512 Tech that provides free ebooks to any special needs student that needs it, that's vision impaired, that needs a specific format of ebooks. And they have funding from the state legislature to have 3 full-time Austin trainers that go to all the school districts and get teachers up to speed on this technology. That's unique to Texas. You typically hear horror stories about what we do, what comes out of the legislature, but that was one example of Texas kind of stepping up and providing funds that actually benefit special needs students. It was kind of remarkable to write about them. What was the name of that organization? Bookshare. It's a company out of California, but they have a pretty big presence in Texas. Another question?
Yes, I'm Jan Morgan. I'm a senior citizen who learned how to use.
Ma'am, can you speak right into the mic?
Oh,
Thank you.
I'm Jan Morgan. I learned how to use, I'm a senior, and I learned how to use computers about 2 years ago, and I learned how to use the smartphone sometime last year. I got my first smartphone. And what I found out in working with seniors through HACA is a lot of the seniors find some of the apps aren't senior-friendly. So if they could make them more senior-friendly, I think more seniors would use them.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think if you take a look at where technology was in the adoption rates now, the technology that existed, a decade ago, even 5 years ago, 2 years ago, wasn't necessarily designed with these things in mind, right? And part of our challenge is making sure that we're being inclusive when we're rolling out technology, when we're rolling out products. And I'm very happy that we've had the Housing Authority of City of Austin and the programs that you're talking about as partners, so that we can make sure that we are doing that we're being more inclusive with our work, and hopefully, maybe even someone from your class can make an app that would better serve that community.
Well, that's a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like Sarah's about to invite you to a hackathon.
And I'll just do a quick shout out. So there is an organization here in town called Knowability, and we work with them. We actually, I believe next week, we have Access U held at St. Edward's University, which is a whole conference related to technology and accessibility. So for example, for folks that might have color blindness, Adobe also redid their whole creative suite. So for a lot of designers and graphic designers now, you can work with different filters there to make sure that everybody can see the colors that you're trying to showcase. So definitely check out Knowability. They do amazing work here in town.
Yeah, that organization is Knowbility, Knowbility, right? Yes. And they're a great organization. And a lot of these apps that are being designed are not thinking of accessibility first. They're designing the app and then maybe adding that later. Knowbility is really pushing the idea of be thinking about who's going to be using your app and the challenges they might face, from the front end. Ma'am?
Hi, my name is Deidre Laban. My question is, when you get hacked on your computer, being a senior citizen, there's no, you can't get back on your computer because it's frozen. So they should have, if you have a phone, an app on your phone that you could call for help, and they tell you how to shut your computer down as fast as you open it, and help the senior citizens, because once that happened to them, they don't want to get back on computers. They don't want to get back on phones. So a training in the community would help them even much better. Even sending, we saw a film Tuesday on seniors. And so.
Cyber seniors. That's a good one. Yeah.
So if there was one-on-one like they showed in the video, young men, younger teens or young youth coming into the community to help the seniors, we could able to get more seniors in the system, with computers, to reach out to their neighbors, reach out to their grandkids.
Yeah, I want to reinforce that. Thank you for sharing that, first off. I want to reinforce that point because I don't think that experience is significant is limited to just her or even Austin or even Texas. The Pew Research Center shows that of the folks who aren't online, over a third of those aren't comfortable with the technology. They have concerns about security. They have concerns about use of technology. And I think that's why digital literacy, digital inclusion programming that addresses those specifically is so important. And as you said, one-on-one programming and support. And the programs that we try to work with, like HACA, like Austin Freenet, Skill Point Alliance, are really kind of at the forefront of providing that one-on-one service. So really, kudos to them for that. And thank you for sharing.
And the libraries, I've seen a lot of great programs
the
out
libraries.
of public libraries.
Well, if I could add to that, just two stories. We had a Microsoft grant many years ago and set up the computer lab at one of the senior centers, the one at 29th and Lamar here in Austin. And we had that interaction between undergraduates and the seniors, and it was terrific. We'd love to, and I think there are probably a lot of schools and universities in the area that would be happy to participate in something like that.
And I'll just also add to that, and it's not just, I completely understand, the seniors here as well, but even for myself, I was insecure with hackathons. I don't actually know how to code. I'm still learning myself. And so I think that broader point about more workshops, doing more work for everybody to get involved, to just kind of get over that hump. It is nerve-wracking to sit in front of a computer when you do not know the programs or what's going on. And I know I've certainly felt that. So just adding that.
Yeah, it seems like there are some hacks and scams that are specifically targeting seniors and trying to exploit that. So that's not cool at all. Ma'am?
Hello, my name is Kimberlyn Barton, and I have participated in the hackathon. I am a former student of the University of Texas, and I've been to Google Fiber several times. I'm here speaking on behalf of mobility ambassadors as well as lab apprentice here in Austin, Texas. I've done that through the Housing Authority of the City of Austin. And what we do as mobility ambassadors is we go out through Austin and we try to find out some of the problems that ail Austin citizens on transportation. We're trying to expand the transportation transit system and other things that are going on with the city. And basically what we do is we ask residents of Austin some of the things like how do they get around, what modes of transportation they use, what are the problems that they have with those modes of transportation, and how can, what places would they like to go, where do they go every day, and how do they think we can improve those modes of transportation, or how do they think we can improve our city as a whole in general. So that's the mobility transportation aspect. The lab apprentice part is what we do is we try to bridge that digital inclusion. We try to find those individuals who never in their life would use a computer or smartphone or any kind of technology, and we train them on a device. We find those individuals who are very secure in using computers, and we get them together and say, hey, this is what you can do. You can play a game. You can use computer software. You can learn how to send an email. You can get on YouTube. You can cyber seniors. Essentially, that's what we do. And we do that with our elderly community. We do that with our young people. We do that at 5 different properties at HACA, or Housing Authority. And we sit there, I think there's about 5 of us here. We do that 5 days a week. And what I wanted to know is, do you all provide that anywhere in different states or those kinds of services? Because I know the residents at my property love that opportunity, and that's something that we feel like is helping bridge that divide.
Anybody got
Well,
anything?
we'd definitely be interested in talking with you because that's an area that we feel can help support our program, Spectrum Internet Assist, having that digital literacy piece. So, because we currently don't offer it. So, would love to talk with you afterwards.
Wonderful. And I'm sorry I was talking so fast.
Where would people find that? Where do people find you online?
I will stay afterwards, and I do have some business cards. Perfect.
Thank you.
Any other audience questions? Right, well, I think we're going to wrap up a little bit early, but thank you so much for our panelists for being here today. Oh, we have one more. Okay. Two more.
My name is Astrid Duenas, and I have a question about what are the plans for the future. This is a multilingual city, and we can have a lot of things wonderful and amazing for English speakers. Some resources for Spanish speakers, but what about Farsi speakers, Arabic speakers, Persian speakers, and all those kind of minorities that in a few years we will face? The leaders of this city will be their kids, and how they can support their kids if they don't have the tools, they don't know how to use the basic technology, and how are us to work for the next 3 or 5 years, because that's a reality, that's something happening right now, and we don't have resources to support those peoples in their own languages. And those are the parents of the future leaders of this city.
Multilingual services?
Yeah, I will say some of the best programming that I've seen here in terms of digital inclusion, digital literacy are multilingual. They're also multi-generational. I think in general, when you have programs that try to meet folks where they're at, if you've got, an after-school time program for kids, maybe the parents should be able to be there, and maybe it should be in multiple languages. Those have been, from what we can see, extremely successful. So we're going to continue to support those types of programs here locally.
That is why That is why I asked the question, because
Yeah.
yes, one of the ladies say the schools are full of technology and everything, but the spaces are locked. They are not accessible for the parents. And if a parent is not able to be tech savvy or just able to learn or know the basic steps or the basic things, we are facing an educator, second generation leaders here, and how we can be a really good and economic strong city if we don't have prepared people to face those new realities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, that's something definitely to think about is just, I think we tend to think English, Spanish in Austin, and we need to think a little bit beyond that probably. We had one more question?
Hi, and thank you for making this event possible. And the one that stands out the most is Ms. Schaefer over there from UT. I really appreciate your courage to speak and open some doors about the realities here in Austin. And being a native from Austin, I grew up in the 70s going through a different type of situation, which was called, well, familiar with segregation. But, you know, coming down to the digital age, I still see the segregation, even though there's people like y'all trying to make the connection. And I just hope to see more thinkers like you guys, and you shine the brightest, Ms. Schaefer. I mean, I just got to commend you on your braveness to bring in the immigration issue. And me I'm an ACC intern with HACA, and in network administration student, and I was new to this, and coming from the segregated school, we did not have the tools in the late 70s. So when I crossed the other side of 35, I saw a whole new world. When I went and walked in the doors at the University of Texas, I saw a whole new world. And it brings to mind something that you said earlier about the bandwidth and the comparison to UT and ACC. You know, fortunately, I mean, after I realized, you know, I had a degree as a commercial artist without a single course, you know, with computers. And I can, you know, I'm proud, and people are proud of me, of my greatest achievements as a commercial artist. You know, the smallest sign, an 8x12 mural for the Texas Civil Rights Projects. I really am proud of it. And then another humongous outdoor advertisement I did was with Motorola, which ended up being the largest ad in the state of Texas. With that simple degree that I got, and without the use of computers, I went with the old master's techniques of the grid system, you know, and, you know, like Rivera and just popular Mexican muralists that painted for the Rockefellers and everybody else. Their inclusion was different. They loved the brush and they knew how to use it. Here, I see people of color kind of being left out. And, you know, I'm going to give you a prime example in myself. I started working on another degree plan, and I praise Michael Dell Foundation, Susan, and Capital Idea. Hey, we'll get you in another program, and we'll supply you with the tools that you need. Well, the thing is, going back to what you said, Ms. Chairman, the tools that they were talking about was the ACC lab, which does not support some of the critical courses, such as GNS3. You can only use it in a certain room, Wireshark. And then, of course, being an indigent student living in the poverty level, you know, it's hard to even have a computer. And yeah, there was some donated stuff, but they could not support the programs needed to succeed in school. And my advice, or what I would like to know about you guys, I know you're moving forward in the right direction. I'm not here to say shame on Google or anything like that, but when Google came into my neighborhood, I heard, you know, the talk was, oh wow, free internet. Really, from right here by Cesar Chavez. But you know, with this gentrification we're going through now, and then the reality of it that Google went on the other side of the river, not where the concentration of people of color are, but if you go over there, that side of the river, it's just a higher income level of people. It ain't people of color. All of them have been run out. So what I would like to know is exactly what it is we're going to do. And I want to be part of that now that I'm in the game. My eyes are in IT now. I want to learn to breathe IT and learn more. And you know, with my experience dealing with the housing authority, the kids, the parents, those immigrants that are non-English speakers of all nationalities, Arabic, Indian, Mexican, I can relate to them. I dealt mostly with bilingual children and parents. And to me, the most amazing thing is to hear the child. I can see the parent in fear of touching a computer, thinking they're going to break it. Then the child saying, no, mama, or no, daddy, I'm going to help you. It's easy. You can't break these. And they have the courage, they have the knowledge, they're so quick at learning. But I think that digital divide, the access to have that digital inclusion, you know, Google and I mean, you know, that was a big disappointment for me with the gentrification going on in Austin. Like I said, I'm a native. I know the registry for the first census was mostly Mexicans in this area, right here in this area. But yet we have always been denied. My first steps at UT, I didn't feel welcome at all. I didn't understand that. My grandpa warned me, but I later found out. But you know, to me, I'd like to commend you guys to having some dialogue on it. But I think that we're far from not segregating people of color. I think everyone deserves to be part of the digital age. But you know, I hope I didn't sound too rowdy or anything like that.
No, you bring up some great points.
I just want to commend you guys for
Sounds
trying.
realistic to me.
That's trying, and I just love what y'all had to offer. So I hope we keep going forward in the right direction.
Well, we'll have to wrap up, but I do want to say that I think everyone on this panel, thank you. I think the encouraging thing is that everyone on this panel is someone who's thinking about those issues and is thinking about inclusion and kind of taking it up the chain of whatever organization they're working with. And I can't offer solutions to all of that, but I would say definitely make your voice heard. You know, come to events like this, get involved with Freenet, write letters to Google and Charter and everybody else that you think could be doing better, and let them know how you feel and give them feedback. Let them know that there are things they could still be doing, right? Okay. Well, thank you so much for our panelists. Thank you for people that asked questions.
Thank you.
And thank you to Austin Freenet. We really appreciate it. And we'll have more programming coming up soon. Thank you.
How's everybody doing? All right, great. This is an awesome event. Thank you all so much. I'm Catherine Crego. I'm with the Housing Authority of the City of Austin. And we're gonna jump up and do a stretch break, because you know when you're working on that computer, you're really intense. So everybody just take a big stretch break. Okay, awesome. And we'll have an opportunity in the next 25 minutes. You're gonna get to know 3 people that you've never met,
And you're going to discuss some real-life case studies. Okay, so you will have a chance to take a break in just a second. First thing, look around and go meet one person. You have 1 minute to meet one person that you have never met before. Tell that person what your favorite film is. Okay, ready? Go. That one person you've never met. You're doing great.